right back, Charlie.
People deluded, I'm back again.
Come on, Ian. Man. Come on. As the big man Ian Wright just said there, special guest announcement. I finally got James on the platform. You lot have been badgering me. Get James. You lot make great content. I hope you're happy, man. I'm definitely happy. James, big up yourself, man. Appreciative to have you on. How you doing, my friend?
Mate, thank you. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, this is taking way too long. I'm glad we're here, man. Thank you for having me on. And by the way, what a goal.
One goal wonder, man. I've got to keep spinning it. I always tell my subscribers they'll never be able to forget that, man. Yeah, that's what I'm going to show my grandkids when I have them, bro. But yeah, man, how you doing? As usual, people, make sure you're joining the discussion. Smash the like button, all of those things. You would have seen better yet. I've posted James's platform on YouTube. Obviously, he's on AFTV, but he has his own channel, so make sure you're subscribing. Now, if my memory serves me right, I think you've got Italian in you. Now, it's only right to speak about Calafiori. How do you feel about the player? How do you feel about Arsenal's rumours to signing him, man? What's all your thoughts?
You're right. So my mum's Italian. And actually, I spent a year living in Italy in Bologna. So I don't know. I've got
coincident, man.
Well, I don't know the player, but as in person, I don't know him, obviously. But it feels a weirdly personal one because I spent this Euros watching Italy with mum, and he was the only good thing about Italy this tournament. Honestly, Italy were poor. I give him 30 minutes against Albania, and that was it. They weren't very good the rest of the games. But he stood out. Before he was linked with Arsenal, before we knew anything, I just fell in love with the player. I was like, this guy's class. Italy have done it again. Chiellini and Bonucci move on. In come these, other brilliant centre-backs who aren't just like, Chiellini and Bonucci weren't just great defenders. They were cultured footballers who could play.
Mentality monsters, man.
Proper. And here's maybe another one. Obviously, he's got a lot to do before he's actually putting a sentence with those guys. But fell in love with the guy. Saw we got linked, and I thought, okay, I like this, but let's not get excited. And obviously, things have picked up massively in the last week. So I really hope this happens. Of course, it's looking good. We don't know for sure. It's not done till it's done. Things change. But yeah, I really want this. I really want this one to happen.
Why do you want him? Beyond the obvious.
Well, beyond the fact that he plays for Bologna where I used to live, I watched him at the Euros and just loved him. You know what it is, right? Genuinely from like a serious Arsenal perspective now. I think people sometimes, and this is an opinion thing, so I don't think there's I don't think this is factual anyway, but I think sometimes people confuse having a lot of options in one position with that position being solved. So with left back, I think people go, well, you got Timber, Tomiyasu, Kivior, Zinchenko. Timber, we've seen an hour of, and every other player, I'd argue, you could upgrade on quite easily at left back. Now, that's not to say that Tomiyasu isn't a really good option when you're coming up against Mo Salah. If you've got loads of the ball, you've got to break down a low block, Zinchenko. And you know what? You've got a bit of an injury crisis. Kivior's a centre back, you can move him out there. But none of them, for me, are like the answer. Just because there's four of them doesn't mean that position's solved. So for me, getting a player like Calafiori, who has actually played more games at left back than he has any other position. He was a centre back for Italy. He was mainly a centre back for Bologna, but he's played a lot of football at left back. 6'2", fits the profile to a T of Arteta fullbacks and defenders in general. I think then you solve that left back position properly. And what you get is proper competition across the board. You've got Timber pushing White. You've got Calafiori and Zinchenko to offer something different. But you know what? If Timber and Tommy are great form, you can move them along. And that's how you get the real balance in the back four, not just having White, Saliba, Gabriel, and then four other players that can play there. And that's just from a purely profile and squad fit perspective. In terms of the actual player, he just looks brilliant. He looks brave. He looks really... I use the word brave there because he came back from a really bad injury and he plays like...
Serious issue, yeah.
Yeah, he plays like he never had it. But if you look at just what he wants to do on the ball, he doesn't mind receiving it in tight spaces. He doesn't mind driving through a crowded midfield to try and open up the game. And I think Arsenal could do with some of that.
I think you're bang on the money, man. There's so much to love about Calafiori. I don't want to echo the same points you said, but I think you're bang on. I think the fact that he's 22 ties in with what we're doing. I respectfully to Kirill, he's a significant upgrade and someone that could lay down a marker at left back. And maybe if Arteta wants to move him across to centre halves, gives Gabriel problems. I think a few months ago, Mikel Arteta said we've got one of the smallest squads. I think that's in his own part makes our squad bigger. And it's more what he could be for me. It's like, he's a young player. He's impressionable. He's bounced back from adversity, as you would have seen. I know he's only spent like a year or so at Basel, but he's shown he can adapt in other countries. And kind of piggybanking of what you said about Bonucci and players of that ilk, that is what you think about when you think about Italy. You think of the University of Defending, and I think he's right up there. And I just want different options, man. I think with him, he'll bring something, provided we get over the line. I do think Zinchenko is a bit scapegoated, but I'm not going to sit here and lie. I think as we... Pardon me?
With you, brother. Sorry to cut you. I'm so with you on Zinni. I think he is scapegoated. I'm not ignoring his problems, but I think it's made too much of, in my opinion. I'm with you on that.
And I think you're bang on the money there, man. I think he's scapegoated unnecessarily, and I think he's blamed for everyone. I always say I think he has become like the Granit Xhaka before Arteta, or the Hector Bellerin, where you're blamed for everything. But I recognize, obviously, the better we get, the cons to Zinchenko are not outweighed by the pros. And I think, Kirill, I think he's giving it his best shot, but he's just not good enough, if I'm honest with you. So I think it's a step in the right direction. When you look at his, and you said it, when you look at his progressive passing and standing up in tight spaces and standing up where moments of adversity, I think Calafiori is a great signing for us. And it's not even what he is right now. It's the fact that you're 22. Now, we both know Mikel Arteta, it's not really what you are at this moment. It's what you could be. So I think it's a step in the right direction, and I'm very happy with it. I mean, where are you at with Kirill and Zinchenko then? Because I'm sure you've been asked this multiple times. Do you let both go? Is it one going? If one has to go, which one are you leaning towards? Where are you at with that?
Do you play Football Manager?
I think we all do, 100%. I stream it from time to time. Yeah, man.
So you'll know where I'm going with this, yeah?
Yeah.
On Football Manager, it's very easy to have literally 2 players for every position and just alternate all season. And everyone's playing and it's fine because it's a video game, right? Real life doesn't quite work like that. I would love next season our back 4 options to just be Timber White, Saliba Tomiyasu, Gabriel Kivior, Calafiori, Zinchenko. I would love that. 2 players for each position that all do something different, but you've got a good cluster of the same profile there as well. But that's just not the real world.
It works, man.
Yeah, I mean, Arteta said in an interview with ESPN, I think last week, he said there are financial constraints that we have to be aware of. So can you add a Calafiori for 42 million and not, really turn away 20 million for Kivior? I don't think you probably could. You're probably thinking, well, 22 million to upgrade that position. Yeah, sounds about right. That's good. But can you really keep both? Probably not. I'd like to. And I'd like Arsenal to be in a situation where they can alternate the players quite a lot. But I think realistically, you keep your back 4 the same as much as possible. So I think anyone we were going to add to the back 4 had to be a legitimate upgrade in some capacity. I think we'll see more rotating this season than we did last season, but that was more...
Especially with Benjamin White.
Right. I think we have to see that because Ben has played so much football in the last 2 years, through injury, may I say. So what do I think about Kivior and Zinchenko? I guess the next question on that is, who would I rather keep? I think Zinchenko's best. Well, they both basically been here 2 years. I mean, Zinchenko had 5 months more. I think Arsenal are far more suited now to Kivior's strengths, and Kivior does more at left back what Arteta wants from the side recently. But I think Zinchenko's peak at Arsenal in these 2 years is significantly higher than Kivior's. I think Kivior at his best gave us some 7 or 8 out of 10s, whereas I think Zinni at his best literally felt like a cheat code. It was
that first season, yeah.
Mate, really, really did. And people think that was just in the games where we battered teams. I remember we went to St. James's Park, he started left back in that game. And I think the opening goal, or one of the big chances, I think comes from Zinni inverting and we cut through Newcastle. That was a way to a physical side who were going to target him, difficult atmosphere in a title race. And Zinni showed what he was about there as well. So I don't think this idea of like, we'll just get rid of Zinchenko because last season wasn't really it. I think Zinni had a drop. I also think losing Xhaka didn't help. I think Martinelli not being in great form helped. I think not knowing what we were doing with the striker who always drifted to the left, I don't think that helped. So I still think there's a lot to come from Zinchenko. I just don't think we are going to play to his strength as much as we did in previous years. At the moment, if you said 30 million came in for Zinni and 25 million came in for Kivior, I'd sooner sell Kivior, I think. What about you? What would you do?
It's a weird one, James, man. It's a weird one because ideally, I'm hung up on a few months ago. Mikel Arteta said we've got one of the smallest squads. Now, I would genuinely look at Arsenal as we've probably got 14 players that genuinely are trusted. I think 12, really, just as an Arsenal fan. If we assume Trossard's on the bench, the 11 who are out there, and that's not really sustainable. And it's a weird one because I think with Zinchenko, the better we've got as a team, I think, the cons are evidently highlighted and they're not really outweighed by the pros. If the sun's shining at the Emirates and we've got the bunch of possession, then I think Zinchenko is right there. With Kirill, I'm not convinced with him at left back personally. I think Mikel Arteta did well to kind of stop him kind of inverting, and he kind of played as a more traditional kind of left back. And I'm not knocking Kirill because I think he did well against Chelsea twice now. I think he's done well against Liverpool. But I just feel when he came in towards the end of last year, early this year, wherever it was, you're not really tested. Now, you can only play what's in front of you, but we're battering teams, clearing out rival fans before half time. And I just think with Kirill, I just don't think he's convinced. And I think what would probably go for Zinchenko is he's probably more understanding of what Mikel Arteta wants. He does have that Premier League experience. He probably is harder to shift than Kirill because rumours of going back to Italy have persisted since Kirill signed for us, really. And I just think Zinni might say, do you know what? I've kind of been in this situation before at Man City. I know there's competition. I'm a big player. I don't really want to run away. So if it came to it, I'd probably rather sell Kirill. But then if I'm looking at winning a Premier League title and stuff like that, then Zinchenko's done it. And there were moments he came in for City. And it's a weird one because I actually genuinely think none of them will be the first option. I'd rather explore other positions, but I'd rather explore Timber in that role. You alluded to it in that if you're playing against a Mo Salah or someone of that ilk, you've got Tomiyasu. And I also think what goes against Zinchenko is he's not. It's harsh to say he's not an athlete, he's a professional footballer. But in comparison to your teammates, you're not. Like, I don't know how you are, but many people say keep Zinchenko and playing him in midfield. I'm not necessarily against that, but realistically, when are you going to get that? You're not going to play ahead of Odegaard. You're not going to play in that 8 role. Of course, the occasional rotational game and things like that you might. And I think if you go to sleep at fullback, especially in midfield in today's day and age, much less under Mikel Arteta, it's almost suicidal putting Zinchenko there. On the ball, fantastic and silky. I don't really want to lose both. I think there is a reality both could go, but I don't think it makes sense. I think Kirill is more likely to say, do you know what, I've given it a fair shot. I loved Arsenal. It's a sweet gig, but, if the Napolis, the ACs, the Inters, who even Sevilla have been linked with him now, it's a chance to ultimately play regular football. What I would say, though, is I can't actually remember the initial fee we spent on him, but I would like to see us get a bit more than 20 million. I know he's been on the periphery of things, but I think it's more than fair value because I think he'll go somewhere and do it right, man, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think Kivill's stock's gone up since he's been at Arsenal. It must have been. I have to be really honest. When the news came through, I think Romano got the exclusive. January 2023 went Kivill on his way to Arsenal, or deal about to happen. It came out of nowhere, and I thought, who? Like, who is this guy? Like, my initial thought was we've just added a young player to the academy or something. I didn't really know much. But then I looked at his age. I think he was 21, 22 when we signed him, and we were spending 22 million. I was like, oh no, like we're adding a proper
sign up for now sort of thing.
Yeah, it had to be. And I think he's not done anything wrong at Arsenal. Let me say that. I think his standout performance for me was Porto at the Emirates.
To be fair, you could say that.
I thought, and actually, that performance divided opinion. Some people thought he was terrible, which is weird how people saw it so differently. I thought he was like immense in that game. I thought he was better than Gabriel and Saliba, who I thought looked a little bit, I don't know, flustered by the occasion, whereas Kivior seemed really kind of calm and got on with it. So there's a talented player there. I think Arsenal's position with I think pretty much every player outside of the core 6 or 7 is, if you give us fair value, we'll listen. And I know it might sound a bit crazy because we spent so long building the squad. But if someone comes and offers 50 million for Gabby Jesus, I promise you Arteta and Edu are having a conversation. They might conclude, well, no, because to get a replacement is going to cost 70 and we love Jesus for around 2 years, whatever. But they'll have the conversation. I think if 100 million came in for Saliba, they'd all turn around and go, no. Like, I don't care what they offer, we're not doing it, unless then the player, makes a noise about it or whatever. So I think there are certain players who are untouchable. But with Kivior and Zinchenko, I don't think they're rushing to get them out. I don't think they're calling clubs going, look, this player's available, do you want them, blah, blah. I actually think they'll just sit back and wait. And if an offer comes in, like I said, I think they'll want to get most of their money back for both players, because I know Zinni, has done Zinni things, but I don't think his reputation's gone down. I think people know what he's great at and people know what he struggles with. So I think if they were to get 30 to 35 million offered for Zinni and 25 million plus offered for Kivior, I think they'd listen to that, like they would probably quite a lot of players.
I think you're bang on the money, especially with your point in relation to listening to offers, because when I'm talking on my streams, I kind of speak about that. I think while I've never had a conversation with Mikel Arteta or Edu to know it, I think everyone can kind of see, the Eddie Nketiahs, the Reece Nelsons, Tavares, Tierney, those kind of players. Evidently, the club's trying to move them on. I think where you look at the Thomas Partey's, the Gabriel Jesus's, the Kivior, the Zinchenko's, I think the club are more, we're not forcing you out, but we've never been more receptive to offers. And for one reason or another, whether that's injuries, changing team dynamics, it is what it is. What I would say with Zinchenko is, and I've got no basis of this, just based on his experience being at City, almost being one of Mikel Arteta's lieutenants, I don't think we can undervalue what he probably does off the field in terms of a winning mentality, etc. Now, I know once we start talking about things that are off the field, we're getting into dangerous territory and people can see it as a cop-out, but it's almost like the lesser of two evils in that there's actually 2 games I think people are very harsh to Kivior. I know he made a mistake against Bayern Munich, but he's been outpaced by Leroy Sané of all people. And I think in our 0-0 draw at the Etihad, he actually did well. I think football is going a bit weird in that he got turned by Bernardo Silva once, which is going to happen. And everyone's like, he's not good enough. He's not good enough. I do think for Kivior, you're kind of torn though, because I do think some of your performances, regardless of being a centre back or a left back, there should be some consistency. But you're not a left back, or you're not definitely a left back to me in this Mikel Arteta system, and you're not really going to get ahead of Big Gabriel. I meant to ask you as well, where Kivior's concerned, many people say he lacks confidence, and he's never come across as a very confident lad. And you can point probably towards when we won the Community Shield, and Rob Holding was saying, "Come take pictures" and whatnot. What do you make of that?
So I think Alex, who obviously you've had on the channel,
Big him up, man.
Yeah, different knock, man. Well, yeah, he's brilliant. I mean, I'm gonna paraphrase, and I don't want to get this wrong because it can maybe come across a bit wrong. But he was talking about Kivior being quite, I think, shy on the ball. But I don't think he wasn't talking about him personally. I think he was just talking about sort of on the ball, showing some more personality on it. Alex, if you're watching this and I've misquoted you, please correct me. I got the impression watching Kivior that there was definitely a let me not get anything wrong approach. But can you understand that as a backup? I mean, maybe when he was playing at left back, he really was fourth choice. Zinni's out, Tomiyasu's out, Timber's out. Do you mind doing a job? It's not exactly the most confidence building. That's not even me sending shots at Arteta. He's got to do it. He's got to do something.
That's just the reality of the job. There's a hierarchy.
Complete and utter reality of it. If Gabriel got injured, my guess is that Kivior would have slotted in at centre back and they'd have played together. I also think it was a bit of a vote of confidence when Holding was having a bit of a shocker that he brought Kivior in, despite being left-footed, to right centre back alongside Gabriel. We actually picked up.
Wish he'd done that sooner, man.
I wish he'd done that sooner. That would have. By the way, we do need to do that, man. We'll get you on Tactical Insight.
Pick you up, man.
But Arsenal players, the best ones under Arteta, there is a give me the ball, let me take responsibility.
I'm a protagonist.
Thank you. That's exactly it. Not everyone in the squad can have that approach to the game, but. I don't think Kai Havertz thinks to himself, I'm the protagonist. But at the same time, I don't think he thinks I'm going to shirk responsibility. And again, I'm not saying Kivior shirks responsibility, but most players, and I think you can even include Zinni in this, they give me the ball. Give me the ball. Let me try something. They might get it wrong. They might jump for a ball they're not going to get. They might, but I don't really see them shirking responsibility. Now, I'm saying this to say that that's where I think Calafiori, based off very little watching him, to be fair, has looked like someone who goes chest out, like, I'm going to take
He
responsibility.
did that against Croatia in the build up to the Italian goal. I think you're right, man.
Absolutely did that against Croatia. And with Kivior, I see him as someone who is just, let me get the job done and make sure I keep things ticking and do my bit as well as possible. I'm probably, I'm probably being really harsh to him because this guy has made it to Premier League football. He's playing for Arsenal. He's in a team challenging for the title. He obviously has more personality than that. I've got no doubt. But I just mean, we're now comparing you to like others in that potential position and others who are competing there and, maybe fall short on that slightly. I don't know.
I think you're bang on the money because, again, I can't comment. He might be the most confident person I know in the world, but I can only go off an ignorant fan. I do think he lacks a bit of confidence, or maybe you lack no confidence. Maybe you're just in a not in a negative way, but maybe you're just a bit too humble because, when you do look at some of his highlights, exactly, like he's got a great passing range. He can venture forward, and it seems like he grows in more confidence when collectively the whole team grows in confidence. And like you said, as much as I'm saying it's a job, at the end of the day, whether you're first choice or fourth choice, there's naturally a hierarchy. It's got to be playing in the back of your head. And respectfully to the clubs he's been at before in Spezia, it must be like another world playing for Arsenal. With social media, what fans do nowadays. Obviously, you're playing for Arsenal. It's a massive club. So I just think it's a hybrid of things. And if I'm honest, going back to what you said about Kivior playing in the right-sided centre-back pairing, I think that needed to happen. And I remember thinking then, is it a thing in training? Because obviously, as humans, as managers, we're going to revert to type. We're going to naturally go with what we know. So when he threw Rob Holding in, rightly or wrongly, which clearly Kivior done a lot better, was it a thing where Kivior didn't look the most confident? He needed to adapt. Maybe in training there was an element of personality that wasn't there. So he elected for the devil he kind of knows in Rob Holding. Then evidently, when it became evidently clear that Rob Holding is not good enough, then he went with Kivior, and it just feels like swings and roundabouts. I know you can't, what would be the word? Like, you can't replicate preseason and actual real games. But I was actually shocked with Kivior's, to me, lack of really looking exceptional in that inverted role, because I remember during preseason, he looked very good as an inverted fullback. And then he's kind of gone back to type. And towards the end of the season, Mikel Arteta, in my opinion, made him play as a traditional left back, which is a sign of a good coach. You enhance what a player is good at and hide the limitations. But it was just never going to be sustainable, man. So if Kivior does leave, then it is what it is. But like you said, I'm ecstatic to have Calafiori, provided it's over the line. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. Now, obviously, we're speaking about left back, and I'm sure you'd agree with me. I would say the season before last season, that was the first time in a while we didn't feel lopsided. Now, there's a bunch of reasons, Benjamin White, Saka, Saliba, even Odegaard. There are more important players and they're evidently fit. Martinelli has to address his own poor form, but I do think there's a correlation with Granit Xhaka leaving, not really feeling that. Partey and Jorginho kind of filling in. And we've been speaking about left backs. Everybody can see there's been a consistent turnaround in left backs. How do you feel about the left-hand side of our pitch? Because for me, I think it's imperative that we improve it. And Calafiori is a step in the right direction, to be honest.
Yeah, I actually think it's been a major problem.
Major problem, man.
What angle should I take with this? Because there's so many things I could say. I mean, look,
say everything, man. Whatever comes to mind, my guy.
I don't think you can remove a player as key as Granit Xhaka and be surprised that everything else around it collapses a little bit.
Yep.
Now, Martinelli had a poor season, let's be honest. It shouldn't have been that poor. Zinni had a poor season. It shouldn't have been that poor. But I understand why there was a drop-off. I understand why they weren't to the levels of the season before. Because, there's a reason central midfielders are so sought after and considered so important in the game. Why so often they wear the armband? Because they are, they're really crucial to seeing every area of the pitch. They are involved in defense to attack. And when you look at Granit Xhaka and the role he was playing, it was the most rounded role in the team in that final season. I think, bar none. His job was out of possession, slot next to Partey, 2 banks of 4. Don't let teams walk through. You've got to be tight to him as well, because Xhaka's not the most dynamic in terms of, sprint speeds and covering big ground, whatever. But obviously, he's very intelligent with his movement and positioning. Then when we had the ball, it was move up to the 5th lane of attack, make those runs in beyond so Zinni can invert, but do it whilst also combining with your left winger to get the most out of them.
To do 1,000 things, essentially.
Exactly, but also how many times did he get a goal running beyond, like because Ødegaard picked him out of the back post or whatever, made that run to the back post, made that run in beyond the defense. But you've got to time it right, because if we get it wrong and we're transitioned on,
We are in trouble.
So it's all up here. Like, it's all reading the game, intelligence. And while I stand by my general feelings of Granit Xhaka for the first 5 seasons at Arsenal, which is we didn't get anywhere near enough, I think his last 2 actually make it 2.5. He was unbelievable. Like, he was really good for us those last few seasons. And we signed Declan Rice, and I was convinced that he was coming in to be another Xhaka. He was going to come in and play in his role. I didn't think they were that similar. I just thought he would assume that role to a degree. But he didn't really. He started as a 6, and then he slightly moved to the 8, but probably more wary of kind of leaving Jorginho at times as well. So we just never got that balance. The left central midfield spot was played by Rice, Smith Rowe, Vieira, Trossard, Jorginho. Ødegaard, you could argue, went over there a couple of times.
Ødegaard's even dropping a lot deeper last season, and I think part of that is the natural evolution of this side, but that's evidently to cope with the void we've got there, in my opinion. So I think you're right. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't know. I don't think you can throw 5 solutions at one position and not, come out with, but sorry, Havertz was another one.
Havertz as well. God, thank the Lord, he's looking a lot better up front. I never kind of want to see that again.
I'm more than happy to give Havertz all the praise for what he's been doing up front, but in midfield, I actually think that was a disaster.
Man.
I think, look, I can't be too arrogant in the way I say this, but a lot of people had doubts about the Havertz signing as a midfielder, and I think Arteta saw something different in terms of the way he could use that position, second striker, all that. But I think even he was like, no, like, we need to salvage the season, and my strikers aren't doing it, and he's brilliant up there, and it's just not happening in midfield. I think he just threw in the towel, that idea, but he might come back to it. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know, but you're bang on the money in that regards, man. I think he, at that time, I think everyone will remember Kai Havertz Fulham away. I think it was a thing where I kind of need to play this guy into form. Part of it because he's my man. We want to show him some love, make him feel confident. But at the end of the day, I spent 65 million on him. Fans cannot see how he gets us in his own way, closer to Manchester City. And I think Kai is best when he's a free spirit. As you see, he drops into midfield, he works the channels. Evidently, scoring goals is going to help. He gives us a lot of physicality, and we can contest the first and second balls. But I never want to see him in midfield. And as much as I like Granit Xhaka, like I remember being at the Emirates with the whole Crystal Palace game where he threw the shirt on the floor. Crazy. I think as much as Granit Xhaka is, it's not like a Patrick Vieira. It's not like we've got a world-class midfielder. I think the lack of direct replacement means me and you are having this very conversation and we're waffling about Granit. For me personally, man, that's an area I want to address, because as you can see, games are won and lost in the final third and the defensive third. Arteta, for me, has got it spot on with defense. He seems to love signing goalies and defenders. I'm here for that. Up front, I don't know if we'll get a striker. I think we need a winger, but it's the midfield battle. And for me, Edu and Mikel Arteta, I know you're smart enough to know it, but you were midfielders. We can't have these questions. And I'd go as far as to say, for me, I don't really have any confidence of us really getting to the point where I want until we address that midfield. And I think we're selling both Declan Rice and Ødegaard short. You've got 2 pieces to a 3-man puzzle, really. Find another one, for me anyways.
I'm so with you. And just on Havertz really quickly, like, the thing that people would give him credit for when he was in midfield, say, well, his movement. Look at his movement. And I'm like,
you should have movement anyways, man. Come on.
And I'm like, that's great, but I need more than that. Like,
I need more than that, man.
Whereas up front, the movement's the same, but I appreciate it so much more because he's pulling players out of position for Saka, for Martinelli, for Trossard. He's combining with them. His almost few touches per game kind of nature, his kind of more languid approach works a lot better when you're up front leading the line. I do think it adds something. So up front, love it. The thing I find hilarious about the midfield is Arteta was the profile of midfielder we need. Now,
it's funny,
maybe not the level we want, but the profile of player he was, basically a very good footballer, as in technically very good, could play 10 central midfield or 6, but really want him as the 8, as a supporting cast to who'd he play with? Alex Song, Abu Diaby, that kind of thing. It's exactly what you want him. That's exactly what we want.
And that's crazy how we haven't got it now anyways.
But not only have we not got it, he's never signed it. Like, it's not that we had it and then left. Xhaka's the closest. He's never ever had someone as a regular in his team who's just an 8, whose job is.
Why do you think that is?
I think Xhaka was the closest, to be fair. But why do I think that is? I don't know. I think he was at City when they had the Centurions, and they played with De Bruyne, David Silva, and Fernandinho. Like, on paper, that is not a particularly robust midfield. Fernandinho obviously got about, was incredibly physical, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't 6'4", and he wasn't, built like a brick house. Like, he was just
a very intelligent footballer.
Very intelligent, stuck in, covered ground really well. De Bruyne, obviously, like, he's got a bit of size to him, but he's not, again, he's not a 6'5" monster in midfield. And David Silva certainly wasn't one, but he got around. But my thing is, I think he looks as that 2-10 and the 6 as what he considers like perfect football. I think he thinks that's like peak. And actually, the Centurions are my favorite ever Premier League side, as in the best. I think they're the best. No, invincible.
Got a bit scared there, James, man. It's cool. It's cool.
They were my favorite to watch in terms of like of rivals. I've won the titles recently. By far, my favorite to watch. They were the best, I think, as well. I think they're better than the treble winners. I think they're better than recent versions of City. And then you look at that Barcelona team, which has Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets. Now, they were more 8s than sort of just 10s shoved in midfield, but I think he wants to move towards 2 creators. I think he wants to get to. I think his dream is like a prime Smith Rowe with an Odegaard.
It's so funny you said that, because if we go back a few years ago, if you remember, I think we actually lost to Brighton. I think Trossard, funny enough, scored, but Lokonga was the 6. Odegaard and Smith Rowe were rotating kind of 8s and a half or 10s. And I said at the time, I think that's the right idea at the wrong time. And I do think long term that's where he wants to get to, which is why I'm kind of baffled as to why we've not signed anyone in that regards, man. Like, I'm a big fan of Smith Rowe. I've kind of made peace that his future probably lies away from this football club. Odegaard is Odegaard, and if it was up to me, I think Odegaard could be an option in that 8. I'm more than happy to keep him in that 10. I think you would rob Odegaard of being in and around the final third, but where you'd rob him of that, the team would get greater impetus. Like, I think he would be the closest thing internally we can get to that kind of latter stage Santi Cazorla towards the end of his time at Arsenal. And I wanted to ask you as well, kind of a double-edged sword. Where do you see Declan Rice? Now, we know Declan, obviously, the 6 role you play for Arsenal is very different to what you did at West Ham. It's more aligned to Rodri, and he has kind of flirted with the 8. Nobody can say he can't do the 8 role because he's had his best goal scoring season and just been a revelation. But where do you see him? Because I only ask you that because evidently, wherever we see him is, if we have him as a 6, we're signing the 8. If we've got an 8, he's going to be the 6.
Good debate.
It's a difficult one.
4 months ago, I was on Jess's channel. Big up, Jess.
Big up, Jess, man.
And
she's a big Kirill fan, though, so she'd probably be upset with the stream, but big her up.
I mean, like, I'm a Kirill fan. Genuinely, I think I've been more. I've promoted more kind of Kirill prop than most. I just think
I tried to get behind it, and I came to my senses, man. And I'm happy that we're out of it soon. But go on, man.
I just thought there probably wasn't much room for him. So Rice. With the current makeup of the squad, aka Partey, Jorginho, there, Rice for me has to be an 8 because it's the best makeup of our midfield. Odegaard, Rice, and one of Partey and Jorginho. That for me is the best midfield balance you can get. But with the transfer window and the opportunity to change how those midfield options look, I think Rice is a 6 really, because he's the best ball-winning midfielder in the world, in my opinion. I really think that. I don't think anyone wins the ball. No midfielder in world football wins possession like Declan Rice, in my opinion.
Only Rodri could have a claim to that, if I'm completely honest. If that,
even Rodri, who, and I know what people are going to say. Listen, Rodri's the best 6 in the world, and I think he's unbelievable. But you can debate almost everything. There's one thing Rice, I think, does have over Rodri is you don't do him in transition in the same way. And I think it's slightly overdone.
That's true.
Rodri gets dribbled past once, and everyone shares it on social media. But I just mean, like, Rodri, I think, is a little bit more like, if there's space, I think an attacking player fancies themselves against Rodri more than they do against Rice, just running into space.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. So that for me, I mean, Rice for me is the best 6 in the world. And sorry, Rodri is. Rice is the best ball-winning midfielder in the world. And I'm getting pedantic there. So dream midfield for me, like dream, like, you know, basically I can sign
Whoever you
within
want.
reason any midfielder, again within reason, is to have Rice at the base with like Erdegaard and Florian Wirtz. I think if
That would
we
be
got
the
someone
signing
like,
and a half, man.
because then you could play them as 2 10s. You can play Erdegaard a bit deeper. And even if they are both getting forward, Rice covers ground. You invert your fullbacks. Like, the balance we'd have is incredible. If one gets injured, you need to move Erdegaard to a more advanced position. Great. You got Partey, you got Jorginho, or you got Vieira coming into a midfield that is built to get the best out of that profile of midfielder. People get onto Vieira, right? And that's fine. I mean, Vieira's not done enough. But think what's being asked of him. It's basically go to left central midfield, where the job of the left central midfielder has been different with every player. With Xhaka, it was be an out 8, ball winner, but also box to box. Sorry about the thumbs up. I don't know.
Mine, man. I'm used to it.
Don't have to stop my laptop doing that. With Havertz, it's be a second striker. With Vieira, it's be like another playmaker /10. With Smith Rowe, it's be a ball carrier and dribbler. Like, whoever is putting that 8 is basically a complete different profile and also do a complete different thing. So the team isn't set up for Vieira to just come in and look brilliant. I think, and obviously I never want this, touching wood, I never want that to happen. But if Erdegaard missed a couple games and Vieira to slot in at right central midfield, I think you'd see a much better Vieira. The team is built towards a player of that profile, and the system performing that way. He comes in and he would play in a very similar way. I don't think there's any surprise that, albeit it was a long, long time ago, he looked really good against Brentford away in the 3-0 win. Erdegaard was out, Vieira came in, everything just moved like normal. So I think getting that midfield right, or at least consistent, is so important this summer. And we've been linked to Eze. Do I think that's a natural fit? No.
I'm so happy you mentioned him because I was going to ask you about that, but go on, man.
No, that's it. I think he's a brilliant player. I love him to bits. One of my favorite players to watch in the Premier League at the moment. But is he a natural fit? I have my doubts.
I think I'm with you in the sense of I don't think, and I've said this before, I think there's an admiration internally with Eze at Arsenal, and I think for a bunch of reasons, you know, he's a player that will excite fans. He's multifunctional, can play in a bunch of roles. He's English, yada yada yada. And I can't really put my finger on it because people do ask me, but I do think I don't know if he's the exact profile that Mikel Arteta wants in an 8. And what I mean by that is probably someone that's going to play for at least 30 of the 38 games in that role. And I can't put my finger as to why, because, you know, he's a strong ball carrier, his link-up plays there, all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's more aligned to Granit Xhaka. And I dream of a utopia for Arsenal where we've got multifunctional players in that if Rice needs to play 6, great. If he needs to play 8, great. You know, and then we have another player who's multifunctional. That's why I thought Douglas Luiz, would never be like my highest of options. Obviously, he's gone to Juventus now. But I could understand the links definitely after we sign Rice, because you've got kind of 2 multifunctional players. Where Fabio Vieira is concerned, I'm disappointed because I think the ability is there. I would describe his career as stop-start at Arsenal. You look good off the bench, get a little cameos, don't necessarily grab your opportunities with your starts, but then you're here again. And I think he's joined Arsenal at the best and worst time. Best time because we're actually good as a football club again. Worst because, as you said, we had Granit Xhaka there. You've got Martin Odegaard. You know, you're playing off the right for Bukayo Saka, in which you're not like a Foden, a Cole Palmer, them kind of wide playmakers. You're never going to thrive. I actually think Fabio Vieira's got one of the best final balls at this football club, and I would have liked to have seen on a more consistent basis him and Martinelli's link up. And I mean, Fabio Vieira really doesn't have many highlights from last season apart from obviously the cameo off the bench, but people forget that great ball that he provided for Gabriel Jesus, another one with not many highlights against Man United. So it's a bit of a weird one. I mean, we mentioned Eze. What do you think about Mikel Moreno, who's been linked with us, and obviously he's doing his exploits for Spain at the moment? Allegedly, the Athletic have come out today and said Arteta's got a big admiration for him.
Well, if you're trying to look for someone similar to Granit Xhaka, now, guys, I'm not an expert on the player. People who watch him week in, week out might say he's completely different, but he's left-footed. He's 6'2". He contributes in the attacking third and the defensive third. He's got a wonder of a left foot.
Physical as well.
Physical, 28. So he's a good age. He's experienced. He's played in the Premier League before with Newcastle and Rafa Benitez. He's been playing at a high level in Spain with Sociedad. I think he's won a trophy or 2 there. Like he's done well. They've played Champions League football. What does he excel in statistically? Aerial duels in general.
Something our manager loves.
Doesn't that all sound very Granit Xhaka? Like it does to me. Doesn't mean that when you watch him that he looks the same. He might be a little bit more. I don't know. He might be a bit quicker with both feet. I think he might have that turn in tight spaces. He might be a little bit more. He might be really inventive in the final third. I don't know. He might be quicker. I don't know. He might also be worse than Xhaka, a lot of things. But Marino, if Arteta's looking at the things we did really well this season just gone, and then looks at the things we did really well the season before, 2 title chasing campaigns, and he just looks at the best of both, I think he'll feel like there's a Granit Xhaka shaped hole in that second season. So does he go to replace it, or does he stick with his guns to go as someone else? I keep mentioning this. I've done a few shows recently, and on Forever Arsenal. Anyway, we ended the season with needing a goal against Everton 1-1. We ended the season with Ødegaard and Smith Rowe as 2 10s, and Timber and Zinchenko tucked in. So Eze fits really well in that Smith Rowe position, like perfectly. But he so rarely turned to that as his system, Arteta, the double invert, the 2 high 10s. So Marino therefore feels like a player that Arteta would naturally get more out of than Eze, but I don't know. That's just
no one knows.
Set up. I could be completely wrong. Arteta changes things all the time. I just hope when he changes this one, he kind of sticks to it, because he kind of evolved the team tactically twice last season. First time was to get Havertz in the team with Rice as the 6, try to invert Partey. He got injured, tried to do a few things. And then the second half of the season, he went, well, forget the inverts because we're getting caught down that side too much. Let's play with an out-and-out back 4, and let's have a double pivot build-up of actually just 2 central midfielders. And that was...
Leave it to Ødegaard to make the magic happen, essentially.
He asked Ødegaard to do a bit more in that sense, and then Jorginho to come in. So that worked. The one before that with Havertz didn't work so much. So I'm interested to see what the next step is for Arsenal and Arteta. I think
you're bang on the money, and I think the good thing is Mikel Arteta, like, he's a mad scientist. Really, nobody knows what he's planning. It's completely off topic, but I think this is an interesting question. Yeah. Big up Classified. With Italian players, they have a history of wanting to go back to Italy, similar to English players. Do you think we'll have Calafiori at Arsenal for a while?
Good question. Okay. How do I answer that like fairly? Because I don't want to say
really.
Yeah, and I don't want to say anything. I mean, I'm half Italian, but I don't want to say anything like offensive or anything. Like, I think with Italy, and in my experience, which again might be totally unfair, there is like a closeness to home thing. I'm just trying to use the example of the UK where you might grow up in London and then go to uni in Sheffield. I don't know, but my experience of Italy, very little. I will say this. I say very little. I mean, my family are all there, but I only lived there a year. The people I met who went to uni at Bologna, they were from Bologna. Like that's, I think, where it's slightly different. And I don't know if that's the same across the whole country, but that's just like the small experience.
So in your experience, it's more like, obviously Italy is the country, but it's more you're missing your region versus the actual whole of just being in Italy.
Well, maybe, but then that wouldn't explain then why they're all happy to go to Juventus. So I mean, I don't know. Look, I think, is there a comfort there? Like they're comfortable in Italy and don't want to leave. I mean, he's left before to go to Basel, and Jorginho. Loads of Italians have played out of Italy. It's just maybe we're just thinking of Locatelli, who said no. Like that maybe we're just focused too much
on that. I was pessimistic initially with the Calafiori rumors because we've been burnt before with certain Italian-based players, whether they're from Italy or just Italy, or just playing the country. So I'm happy that it looks like we're getting over the line. But I'll cut you, man. Go on.
Well, maybe it's just Juve's pull. Like Juventus are a massive football club, so maybe it's just that. Like ultimately, they grow up dreaming of wanting to play for Juventus. Like it's, unless Real Madrid are knocking on the door, I don't know. Do they perceive English clubs the way we do? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know the exact answer. But my feeling is Arteta and the team will have done so much work. And I agree with that, by the way. Fabian Ruiz would be brilliant.
He'd be amazing, man.
I think Arteta and Edu would do, and Richard Garlick and everyone involved would do so much scouting and research and communicating with the player, their family, their agent, whatever. And if they sense for 1 second that, well, we're here for a year or two before Juve get the money and come knocking again, they wouldn't do that deal. They fundamentally wouldn't do it.
We've seen that several times.
Yeah, we've even seen that the minute we've heard, we've had official reports now that there were bids for Gabriel at the start of last season. That's why he came out the team. I think Arteta pulled him out the team because it was like,
You lost your head a
I'm
bit.
not messing around with this. You're not in the first 11 if all this is going on. So yeah, I think they'll do their due diligence with all that, to be honest.
I think you're bang on the money, man, and you're speaking facts. I want to ask you about up front now because I'm a bit conflicted where strike is concerned because I think us Arsenal fans generally we lack balance. I feel we've got 91 Premier League goals, over 100 in all comps. Kai Havertz has been a revelation purely off the basis of 2024. In what was left of the season, Kai Havertz could say he was our best player, and I do think some fans overestimate the need for a striker, and simultaneously some are underestimating it. What I would say for me, I think we need an attacker. In an ideal world, we get a striker and a versatile winger. I think you need either or. I don't think you can afford to go into next season without one, purely because yes, we can hide behind statistics, but we've seen on several occasions when it's kind of crunch time in certain crunch moments. I'd even say Villa this season, where we could have killed the game in the first half, or definitely the December period. We need a cold-hearted killer in front of goal, because there was a period last season where we was creating a bag of chances and we couldn't put them in, which is a bit weird because I'd say from August up until that point we had a creating chances, let alone converting. So it's a weird one. But do you think we need a strike? Because many people will say, what does that mean for Kai Havertz? He's found his home there. He's number one, etc., etc.
Well, the question of whether we need him, I think, is like determined by how much money we have and how much we feel we need upgrades in other positions, and therefore, are we confident what we have? So sorry, that was such a pedantic reply, but I guess what I mean by that is like, if we can get Osimhen for 60 million, say the price comes down loads and we really like the player, we wanted him for 60 million. Maybe at the moment we're going, no, we're not paying 100, no, we're not paying 80, and then it becomes 60. And that is still and that's a good fee that allows us to get the midfielder we really need and whatever, another player maybe. Then yeah, it's like, yeah, well, we do need a striker. We do need someone who's perhaps more reliable than Havertz, more or less injury prone than Jesus, more of a natural goal scorer than both. And someone who's going to, upgrade us in terms of getting more goals in that front three. But I also think in terms of needing a striker, I position it more as we need a forward. We need another upgrade and another player to that front three that's going to add something. Now, my dream signing, albeit the release clause is finished now, but my dream would probably be Kudus.
That would be a good signing.
Kudus,
either him or Nico Williams.
And Williams. So Williams, Rashford, Sane, Kudus.
Oh, we'll get on to Rashford. Go on. We'll get on to Rashford. We'll get on to Rashford.
4 players, though, yeah. Yeah, we'll get into the nitty gritty of all 4. But my feeling is that's a good market. Like those 4 players that we're talking about, maybe they're not all available, but yeah, that feels like a good market. Whereas at the moment they're saying 100 million for Osimhen, 85 million for Gyökeres. I'm not completely sold on either. Are there other options that do add something? I don't know. I'm really torn. Basically, if you said right now, Kudus for 80 or Osimhen for 80, you might think I'm crazy, but I love Kudus that much. I don't
think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I think with Kudus is, going back to what you said about reports, the Athletic said we had interest in Kudus, and if it wasn't for PSR, we might have been able to make a bid. My point is to just say simply, Arteta, Edu, whoever, there must be some willingness to see what the player can bring, can cover a bunch of roles, would be a killer on the transition. And as I said, for me, the first thing would be a striker. But if you bring me a versatile attacker that can get double figures, I think we could live with that. Because again, if being prolific was the prerequisite for being in Mikel Arteta's system, respectfully, Kai Havertz wouldn't be there. Eddie wouldn't have had his run in a couple of seasons there. Gabriel Jesus definitely wouldn't be there. And I also think simultaneously as well, while, the game will look, certain things in the game, as much as it's ever changing, will always be the same. Strikers still need to score goals, but we cannot be naive to, to the fact of you need to do other aspects. You need to drop into midfield. You need to go out wide. You need to be able to affect the game without scoring. So I don't think that's crazy. I mean, where Osimhen's concerned, if we could, I wouldn't be against it.
No,
so I don't think that's crazy, bro.
I certainly wouldn't be against it. But you know what? As you were talking there, like you sparked the thought in my mind, which is ultimately what are we left with right now? I think in the striking position, Havertz, Jesus, Trossard, and I know Eddie's still there, but it looks like he's going to leave. So Havertz, Jesus, Trossard, while they're all different, I think Jesus is more of a skillful, flary 9 who will, pull wide and make things happen. Havertz, I think, is brilliant in the box and good in the air and does other things. Trossard is a brilliant false 9. Ultimately, all three will do what Arteta asks, which is drop into midfield, combine, run the channels a bit, all that, bring the front three together. Whereas with Martinelli and Saka, I think the minute you lose one through injury or suspension or whatever, no one does what they do.
You're in serious trouble if we lose either one.
And I know people go with Trossard the way end of the season. Yeah, but and listen, he hit in fantastic form. But if your game plan is to play with wingers that have blistering pace, like you've only got 2 of them and they fill 2 positions. So you've got no one else in the squad outside of that first 11 that give up what they give in terms of pace. Jesus is pretty quick. He's not explosive. Trossard is very good, but would play it slightly differently. I think we need to add something more in the mold of a really pacey forward, gets goals, gets assists. It's not easy to find. I know it's not, but I think the market.
The dream would have been Isaac for me, but it's a dream.
Isaac's perfect because he can play wide as well.
Yeah.
As well as up front. So he's kind of the perfect signing. But I think the market for that kind of winger is better than the striker market. And I don't think we just spent 30 million on 27 million on Raya goes out this summer. 42 million would go out on Kivior, Calafiori. So we're what? 40, no, terrible maths. We're 70, 80 million deep there.
70, 80, probably 80. Let's call it 80.
80, right? Then you've got a midfielder. What's that going to be, another 60 million?
We can assume it's Mikel Moreno. He might be the cheapest because he's got a year or so on his deal. But again, you're looking at 40 to 60 million potentially for a decent one in today's day and age, allegedly.
And there you go. What's left on a winger? Now, I'm not saying, or a forward, sorry. Now, I'm not saying all these other wingers are going to be cheap. I'm not saying you get Rashford for 20 million and Kudus for 30. But being a naturally more, saturated market, like, you get them, I think, for a more reasonable price than the 100 million that's being quoted for quite a lot of strikers. 120 for Isak, 100 for Osimhen. And I think
crazy, isn't it, really?
I wouldn't pay that money. I think the only one I'd do is Isak for 120 if we've got everything else. So, yeah.
And that's the issue. And I think it's weird because I look at what we've got defensively. In theory, the serious options, I would say, in midfield and collectively in the squad, we've got solid foundations. But then I look throughout the team. Evidently, I'm very passionate about signing a central midfielder. We don't do that, in my opinion. We're in issues up front. I will better yet front three. It's not that I'm being rude against any of the positions we've got. I do think people are writing off Gabriel Jesus. I can't blame them because he's been injured. But I think at most he can offer something to the squad, much like all the others. But when you really look at it and you look at that front three, Saka is the only one that you could say you can't really upgrade upon. Not even just this year, 2-3 years ahead. You could definitely get, I'm not to say you're alienating these players out of the squad, but you could definitely get someone that does what Kai Havertz does and potentially scores goals. Left wing, I'm a big fan of Martinelli, but that's probably what's stopping him is the volatility in his form and the consistency. So it's a bit of a weird one, but I do think we definitely need another attacker. I think if we don't get another attacker, obviously we ran the title down to the last day last season, so it's a bit hypocritical. But I think if we don't get an attacker, similar to how I feel about midfield, we've kind of drawn enough blood from the stone, if that makes sense. We've kind of got enough out of the collective squad. Of course, none of our players are in their final form. They've all got potential and all of that jazz. But that's where I think the issue is really. And this is where I think Mikel Arteta, in my opinion, has to earn his keep, bro. I think this is an interesting question. On the basis of needing a forward, what about Yilmaz from the Turkish team who can float around similar to Ferran Torres? Me personally, I'm not really for that. If we are going to bring someone in, I want someone who can do what, James has been alluding to with Jesus, Kai Havertz, Trossard, but they're just a bit, if I'm honest, you're just a cold-hearted killer in front of goal. Goals win games at the end of the day. And had we have picked anything from 3 to 6 points up last season, where would we be? What talking points would me and you be talking about right now? But that's all ifs, buts, and the third, man.
I want to see Trossard playing more down the middle next season. And I know that Havertz has that position. He's still got Jesus, but I think Trossard is more suited to being in central areas. The reason he's got all those goals is because he does do well in the box. He is
the best finisher at the club, if I'm honest, in my opinion.
He's the best finisher at the club. I think he's one of the most clutch players at the club as well. The fact that he got the equaliser against Bayern Munich, the winner at Old Trafford, like those things don't really surprise me. And I don't like seeing him on the touchline. I think he's really wasted out there. I think I'd almost go as far as say, like, he doesn't do much when he's out there. It's difficult for him. I'm not saying it's
very hit and miss.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why I don't mind adding a left winger. I don't mind adding so I don't even necessarily win. If we had in Nico Williams and our options next season were Saka, Williams, Havertz, Jesus, Trossard, Martinelli, I think
I'm cool with that.
you got 3 players with pace and skill. You got 1 with real height. You've got, your more tricky kind of forward in Jesus. You've got a false 9 in Trossard, and basically all of them, except for Havertz, can basically play across the whole front 3. Even Havertz probably could. Look, it's not the big dream 9 signing that I wanted that's going to take us over the line, but I feel like those are really good options for next season. I would feel
A lot safer with our attacking options, if I'm honest. I think you're bang on the money there, James, man.
Yeah,
which is a technical one. Before I let you get out of here, though, I'm cautious of the time. I've got a couple of questions. Big up you lot who did ask these questions. I big you up. These guys who got these questions in advance here. First thing, this is probably for Universe. So here's mine. What is the absolute minimum achievement for the club next season? And if we stayed with Kai and Jesus whilst releasing Eddie and Nketiah, how would the tactical shift with Calafiori affect our goal output?
Could you read that one more time? Sorry.
Right, this is what they've said. Do that again. This is probably for Gooniverse. So here's mine. What is the? Well, I think it's actually 2 questions. So let's start with the first part. What is the absolute minimum achievement for the club next season?
It's another title race. It has to be, and I need to see us go much further in the cup competitions.
I need the FA Cup as a minimum. Of course, I want to win the Premier League and the Champs, but we're playing Man City. And I think context applies in it. People will be lazy and say, oh, it's another year of challenging. No, Arteta didn't win it. But context applies. If we do what we've done in the last 2 years and the squad is improving and all of that sort of stuff, I don't think anyone can say anything. We just have to wait till Pep leaves. But I do need us to do better in the cups because it feels not that we sacrificed them, but it would be nice to have a trophy. And then double-edged question. If we stayed with Kai and Jesus whilst releasing Eddie and Nketiah, I think that means selling Eddie. How would the tactical shift with Calafiori affect our goal output? I don't really think it does, potentially, because I think we'd do the same potential things that we do with half the left backs. But where are you at with that?
Confidence in your back 4 makes you play with more freedom up the pitch. So
gamble a bit more as well with Rice as well, with what you're saying.
Yeah. So ultimately, if Calafiori makes us better at the back, then we're a better team. So we should have a little bit more freedom going forward. We should play with a little bit more, even more. I mean, listen, we were a good attacking team last season. First half of the season, a bit hit and miss, but we got a lot better. Scored a lot of goals.
Definitely since post-Dubai, man.
Yeah. So yeah, Calafiori helps I mean, in modern football, any player you add across the team helps you in more ways than just the position they're in. Haaland is there to score goals, yes, but I'm sure City quite like that he's 6'5" and can clear corners. I'm sure that's just another element to it. Probably does that better than Sergio Aguero did that. So I just think with every player, they are going to be impacting, especially in the modern game, the way everything's set tactically, the way strikers have to defend by pressing up the pitch and defenders have to play and build up attacks. You see that they're just always impacting both ends of the pitch.
As I always say, our first attacker is David Raya. It wouldn't matter if he could play with his feet. And our first defender has been Gabriel Jesus, but it's currently Kai Havertz. And the poster boy for me for our defending, it'd probably be William Saliba. I actually think it's Martin Odegaard. We see him wave his hands and do all of that jazz. So I think you're bang on. Another kind of one carrying on with or piggybanking off the Calafiori stuff. Guardiola surprised me last season in the attacking phase of play. He's also solid defensively. Do you see Calafiori being our version of that?
Well, Gvardiol, what he did, basically going from like generational centre back to, and that's a bit strong, but
no, they were saying that social media, they were saying he did that in the front.
To basically Ryan Giggs on the left wing. What was going on? Yeah, that took us all by surprise, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
That high up the pitch. I think the guy hasn't played much football really at a level so we can know. But if you're making comparisons purely stylistically, I think he's closer to John Stones stepping into midfield than he is Gvardiol bombing down the left wing. But I think he'll do a little bit of both. Hopefully.
I think that's facts, and you never know with Mikel Arteta. Like I would say, with now Calafiori's impending arrival at the club, I'd imagine he's going to play left back, and maybe Gabriel might get rested at left centre half. But when you're versatile and able to play there, you never know what the gaffer's got planned. Like I'm actually keen to see what Timber's about. I think Timber could play on the left. I think he could play on the right. Obviously, he could deputise at centre half. I don't think he'll play in midfield, but he's got the raw capabilities in theory to play there. So Arteta's got some positive questions to ask himself. What's up, DG and James? Got 3 more questions, bro. What's up, DG and James? Fairly complex midfield situation going into the window for next season. What are your thoughts? I feel like if we brought in Bruno or De Jong, that's all the funds used in that area, and we could face the same issues as the Champions League knockouts last season, trying to break teams down. Ideally, we need 2 players. I think he means we need 2 midfielders. If that was up to me, I'd do that. But how do you feel, man?
It's difficult. Again, if Partey goes, whatever happens, we need someone. If Partey goes, we definitely need someone, but maybe that someone we need is a slightly different profile. It's difficult.
It's a difficult one, man. It's
everything has an impact. Eze, I love Eze because he can play in that 10 space, left 8 maybe, but also out on the left wing. But I don't know if we really need that. I'd rather get a specialist central midfielder and a specialist winger. But if we lose Partey and our money goes on an Amadou Onana, who's more of a 6 balling midfielder, then I'm thinking, well, then we're probably better off getting Eze because he helps us in midfield and he helps us in the front 3.
Kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, really.
That's everything, yeah. Yeah.
I think I think James pull it right there. I think there isn't one. I think the ideal one would be to do what City do and just spend a bag of money, but we're not actually privy to that. Should Arsenal not be as afraid of Liverpool now that Klopp has left?
I'd always be afraid of clubs of that size.
Facts.
Yeah, I mean, Man United have been a joke and they just won the FA Cup. They've actually, Ten Hag's been a bit of a joke. Point. He's got 2 cups back to back.
And a new contract, bro.
Yeah. And Liverpool, they've built a reputation for operating really well as a club, being really well researched, scouting really well, and planning really well. Like the Klopp announcement came in January. I don't think you want to lose that reputation in the game. So I think they'll have done their homework with Arne Slot. The manager market wasn't great. But I think they probably have come out with one of the better managers purely because I trust Liverpool. Don't know much about him. I just trust them to get it right.
I mean, it's Liverpool, innit? You should always be afraid of every big club, especially even the big clubs that have been languishing for the last 2 years. Question.
Sorry. Arsenal were a bit of a joke, and then we won the FA Cup twice.
Yeah. But we didn't get to cut the same luxuries that certain clubs who won the FA Cup last year got. We was told it's only, it doesn't matter, you finish 8th. It's funny how football fans move the goalposts. But we're Arsenal Football Club. Our star boys are never going to be rated. See what they're doing for England and France. Our manager isn't going to be rated. And you've got managers saying trust the process in their press conferences. Hated, adored, but never ignored, my friend. My last question is somebody has said, does Kai Havertz's Euros performances worry you? I would say no for me because I don't really care about Germany.
I thought he was good in the opening game. I thought he was good in the round of 16. Who did they play in the round of 16? Denmark. I thought he was good in that game. Struggled in some others. Doesn't worry me. Kai Havertz, like when he's not on it, Kai Havertz really is quite unimpressive. But when he's on it, it feels like, I don't know. I just don't.
He's an enigma, man.
Sometimes he's not. I think he needs another year of coaching with Arteta in a solid position now.
It's going to have to be up front, surely, because we've been speaking about midfield. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to wake up tomorrow and there's an equal level of performances he's putting in up front in central midfield. I'd love him to look like Ballack or Schweinsteiger or Kimmich or any decent German footballer we could list, but it's probably not going to happen, man. But with that, though, folks, it's been a fantastic hour and 4 minutes. James, it's always great to speak to you. It's fantastic to get this done. Let people know where they can find you. Not that I imagine they don't know already, broski.
Mate, thank you. The channel's just called James B, although it's actually getting a rename. And I'm on AFTV. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
No, it's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll get you on my podcast as well.
Come on, just let me know. We'll get that done, man. We'll get that done, bro. There's no worries, man. It's always a pleasure to speak with Arsenal fans who know what they're talking about. And it's nice to not do the agenda thing, because I do think football media is all agenda driven. People can't be wrong. People always want to be right. So it's refreshing, man. And I mean, I think there's a lot of optimism where Arsenal's concerned. But yeah, James has told you where you could follow him. You know, he's on AFTV. He's got his own channel. Again, follow him on all the socials. And yeah, man, let me let the guy get out of here, 'cause I know he's pressed for time. Let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace, people. Peace, peace, peace. James, one love, my guy, man. Safe.
Like